How to hide piercings. Coming up next on Body Piercing Basics, episode number 35, so stick around. For those that are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I'm the owner and operator of the Axiom Body Piercing Studio, located inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking at a level of expertise as somebody who has done piercings, thousands and thousands and thousands of piercings, and has answered this question numerous times. In fact, this is probably one of the more common questions that I get asked. It's usually a situation where maybe they got the piercing without talking to their employer, or they've changed jobs, or they're going to see grandma, or they have a wedding coming up. There's usually some kind of thing that's kind of they didn't really foresee or plan ahead. The biggest lesson I can give you from this is always plan ahead. If you work in a profession that may or may not like that, Medusa piercing, you probably should talk to your employer beforehand. But we'll get a little bit more into that later. First off, here's some piercings that are easy to hide if you're just kind of looking at maybe I want to get something, but I need something that most people don't notice or that I can hide easily. Top of this list would be septum piercings. Septum piercings, because of curved barbells or circular barbells and the U-shaped retainers, can easily be flipped up inside your nose. Unless somebody's specifically looking straight up your nose, they probably are not going to notice that you have the piercing, or if you have one of those high turned up nose, they might notice it. But in most cases, you can easily hide the piercing. Tongue piercings would be another one, unless you're one of those people that talks like this and opens their mouth and constantly plays with the jewelry. Most people, when they first meet me, will not even notice that I have my tongue pierced. Anybody that's watched these videos has probably eventually figured out that I have my tongue pierced because I make funny faces and things like this. But other than that, if you keep your mouth somewhat short, somewhat small, and you stay on the same level visually as they do, most people don't even notice it. You can also buy those, they used to call them no-see-ums. They're kind of a texture shaped. It has texture on the top of it and is close to like a pinkish color. That's a little easier to hide and not quite as noticeable. Of course, with tongue piercings, there's always a possibility somebody's going to notice it. Stick with ear piercings. Ear piercings, especially on females, are very socially acceptable. Unless you go completely nuts, most people are not going to be that concerned about you having maybe some lobe piercings, a trachea piercing, and maybe a rook. If you, the more extreme type of piercings, they might be a little bit more, you can't wear that, like industrials and large jewelry, stretched ears, etc. So if you keep it kind of simplistic and elegant, most people, most employers and et cetera are not going to be that concerned about it. Also, if you're a female and you wear your hair down, it's easy to hide those. As always, the best option is to get pierced below the neck. It's easy to hide most below the neck piercings with some clothing. And nobody needs to know that you have them unless you tell them about it or show them the piercing. Final one, and this is kind of an old school one, is when we used to do labret studs all the way almost down to where the dimple in my chin is, right, as deep as we could. It was sometimes easy to hide it inside a beard, especially if you wore something that was kind of a darker titanium in. It really wasn't that noticeable depending on how full your beard was. So let's talk on to some suggestions, and I'm also going to go through some things that I've found on the internet that I wouldn't suggest. First one is talk to your employer beforehand. I know maybe you're switching jobs and employer A said that it was okay and employer B says no. You've gotten conflicting views from supervisors, etc. There are some facial piercings that seem to become more socially acceptable, and as more people get pierced, employers are going to get to a point where they cannot say, no, you can't have that here. Nostril piercing, a prime example, it's almost become completely socially acceptable. It's not uncommon to see people working at somewhat conservative service jobs, from waiting tables all the way up to, I guess, grocery clerks, people in the medical industry, etc. So that is really something you need to talk to your employer about. If you're in a program where you're training to get into the medical field, or teaching field would be another one, talk to your instructors and ask their opinion on it and what their work experiences have been like, and figure it out from there. Next thing is, these are some suggestions. I did a little Google search just basically because I like to see what's out there. And this is what I came up with, and here is kind of some of the reasons why I don't think any of this works. These are some things that are either don't work or are terrible ideas. The first one being taping over the piercing or putting Band-Aids over it. I remember being on a family vacation, and we stopped at a restaurant to eat, and the hostess/waitress was there at the front and greeted us. And my sister asked me if there was something wrong with her, if she had some type of disease, because she had a Band-Aid going over both sides of her lips, the center of her chin, her nostril, her eyebrow. And I'm like, no, she's hiding a bunch of piercings. It looked disgusting. I don't care what anybody says. Any employer that'll put up with that, I don't know if you'd even want to work for them. You're not fooling anybody. And if you're healing the piercing out during that period of time, you're creating a dark, moist place where bacteria and et cetera are going to collect. There's also the issue of the adhesive from the Band-Aid getting on the jewelry and starting to collect contaminants and dust and debris. So it's not a good idea. I do not suggest taping over piercings. The only time I've really ever even suggested it was with nostril screws. If somebody was having an issue with them falling out during that initial healing phase, where you leave them a little bit on the big side to allow for inflammation, is maybe doing a loose Band-Aid over the piercing while they sleep, just to be on the safe side, if they're really paranoid about it. But beyond that, it's just not a good idea. The second one, retainers. A lot of these are sold as, you can hide it from everybody. The thing is piercings are three-dimensional. They're not two-dimensional. They're not flat. And clear plastic is reflective, and people will notice it. Retainers were originally designed for keeping piercings open during periods of time like medical situations or times when you didn't want to wear the jewelry for whatever reason. You could keep the piercing open and not have to worry about it closing. They're not really designed to be worn long term. They're not designed to hide the piercing. The fact is clear plastic is just as noticeable as implant grade steel. You may have a slightly lower profile, but there's other options like putting flat disc on the piercing that could change that problem. The next one, flesh-colored acrylic in metals. This one, I don't know why people think this works or who they're fooling. The reality is nobody's color of skin tone matches any of that material. People do notice them. They're going to notice if they look at you and your face is all this color, and then all of a sudden there's a light or darker pigment it's in the perfect circle. We tend to look for things that don't fit. We look for the thing that doesn't belong. People are gonna notice that flesh-colored thing just as readily as they would a giant silver ball or a gem set. Concealer and makeup. This might work somewhat on a well-healed piercing. And when I say well-healed, I mean you've had the piercing for at least 6 months to a year, where you know that it is not continuing in the healing process. And in that case, covering the jewelry with a concealer might be okay, but during the healing period, we definitely don't want to do that. There's a number of reasons for that. The main one being is that makeup can work its way into the piercing, agitate it, and cause issues, including bumps. And if you think jewelry is hard to hide, try a big, giant, ugly glandular cyst on your nostril. That's pretty hard to hide. The next one I heard recently, which was nail polish and acrylics and paints and etc. You don't want to put any of this stuff on a nice piece of jewelry. It's probably going to wear off. Back to the flesh-colored thing, it's very difficult to match your pigment perfectly. So it is probably going to be just as noticeable and kind of have a shiny element and look out of place and weird. The last one is removing the ends. I had a client that used to do this, and she got away with it for years on her beauty mark piercing. She would just take the ball off and then put it back on at the end of her shift. Yes, it didn't cause problems, but it really depends on where the piercing is located at. The reason why we put those ends on there in the first place is to ensure that the jewelry doesn't fall out. And if it's in an area where, like your lower lip, where it's moving up and down all the time, chances are it's going to fall out. You might, I don't know if it really made it any less noticeable because there was like this empty little hole right here that looked hollow, like a tunnel. So that's all I have to say on this subject. I hope I've given you some practical advice that you can use. I know I didn't give you a lot of solutions, but part of piercing and getting pierced is people seeing your piercing. Especially with facial piercings, that's just part of life. The same thing with ear piercings. We do it to enhance the area, so there's really not, hiding it kind of defeats the purpose. There just has not been anything that's really came on the market that I would say is quality jewelry that is easy to hide. I'm sorry. I didn't have a perfect answer for you. But I hope it made you think. If you have had a process of hiding at work or had a situation relating to this, please share it in the comments below. If you have any questions about anything that I covered, please make a comment. I'm happy to answer those questions. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Also, if you would like to see more of these, please subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you know whenever we post this stuff. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, check out our merch store. We have plenty of t-shirts and various other things that not only support us, but also show your body art pride. Other than that, have a good day. Hope all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everyone.